So when the NBA season started, I figured at some point I'd be forced to do a video on Dillion Brooks. Probably because he said something, did something, kicked somebody, got ejected from a game. Maybe he threw something at somebody. Basically, I was probably going to do a Dillion Brooks story for all the wrong reasons. But I find myself in this unique position of actually having a chance to watch Dillion Brooks play most of the games he's played in so far this season. And I can tell you at this point, I can confidently say that Dillion Brooks at this point is proving everyone in the NBA, including myself, wrong. Dillion Brooks has had a resurrection of sorts. Get this, he's had 9 games so far this season of 20 points or more. He's had 6 games of 25 points or more. He's had 3 games where he's actually gone north of 30. Over his last 10 games in the NBA, and I thought I would never ever say this, Dillion Brooks has actually been averaging 25 points per game. During that time, he's shooting 61% from 2-point range. Look, when Brooks signed that 4-year, $86 million deal with the Houston Rockets, I thought, well, maybe that's the cost of actually getting an enforcer on your NBA basketball team. Maybe there's some justice somewhere in paying Dillion Brooks as much money as the Houston Rockets decided to pay him. On today's NBA Rundown, we're actually going to give Dillion Brooks his credit. We're going to cover some of the things he's actually said to LeBron James recently. We'll talk about that big contract, and we'll talk about how the resurrection of his career can squarely be pointed at what actually happened to him during his time in Houston. Welcome back to the NBA Rundown. As always, North America, I'm Dave Dabbah, and I bring you daily NBA news, trade reports, trade rumors, and of course, a little bit of commentary. New to the channel, absolutely, please go ahead and subscribe. I want to thank everybody out there that subscribed so far. We're 2,500 plus subscribers in and trying to get to 5,000. So we're going to begin, and we'll get into some of the stats and those things in just a little bit. But if you watch Dillion Brooks play at all in Memphis, one of the things that you would see often is a word that I like to bring up when I'm talking about basketball players who struggle to shoot the ball. And that word related to Dillion Brooks is clank. He would clank a lot of shots while playing for Memphis. And if you go back and look at the stats will actually justify what I just said. Now, during his time in Houston, he certainly was able to actually change things around. And one of the big changes was preventing Dillion Brooks from deciding when Dillion Brooks wants to shoot. In other words, the Houston Rockets coaching staff figured out how to tell Dillion Brooks when he can shoot and when he can't shoot. Dillion Brooks is like a lot of players when they enter the NBA, they think they have the green light to shoot whenever they want to. And in this particular case, giving Dillion Brooks the green light to shoot whenever he wanted to in Memphis proved, for the most part, not to be a great idea. Now, I don't want to take anything away from the enforcer role that he played with Memphis and the chemistry that he had on that Memphis Grizzlies basketball team, because certainly those things were important to the success of that Memphis team, as well as to Dillon. But what we've actually seen out of Dillon since he joined the Houston Rockets and now 20-plus games basically into a career with the Phoenix Suns is nothing short of a total offensive resurrection. Now, that doesn't mean Dillion Brooks is still not Dillion Brooks. Dillion Brooks on LeBron James. So Dillion Brooks had a LeBron James exchange the other night when Phoenix went into Los Angeles and flat out destroyed the Lakers. Nothing has surprised me more so far in the NBA than that particular game. Anyways, so Brooks says he likes people who bow down to him, and I don't bow down. And that was his statement about LeBron James and about what they were actually talking about. Now, I mentioned Dillon Brooks signed a fairly significant size deal with the Houston Rockets, and he's in the third year of that deal now with Phoenix. He's got one more year on this deal. And I think if he keeps playing the way he's playing, the Phoenix Suns have found themselves a bit of a diamond in the rough, because there aren't too many players in the NBA that can truly get underneath people's skin and actually still perform well on the offensive side of the ball. And that's exactly what Dillon Brooks has been doing. Now, he's not a great three-point shooter. And I think actually during his time in Memphis, he thought he was. Then when he went to Houston, and I'm pulling up the stats so you can see him, when he went to Houston, what they basically did was cut down on when Dillon Brooks was actually able to shoot three-pointers. In other words, they put a muzzle on his three-point shooting attempts, and that actually raised his three-point numbers pretty significantly. Now, we've seen a drop-off in that so far with the Phoenix Suns. The good news is, if you're a Phoenix Suns fan, is he's not shooting an outrageous amount of three-pointers at this point. So I'm sure the percentages for Dillon Brooks will ultimately go up as the season goes on. But still, just watching Dillon Brooks play with the Phoenix Suns so far, and the way he's been playing and the way he's been attacking teams. He's playing bully ball. He's backing players down. He's actually making bank shots that he used to clank during his time in Memphis. It's been a long time in the NBA for me since I've seen a player like a Dillon Brooks actually improve once he's sort of already established himself in a certain way. Like, a lot of times in the NBA, you'll see players who were on great teams go to bad teams and their numbers suddenly skyrocket. But what we've seen out of Dillon Brooks so far with the Phoenix Suns, and of course the Phoenix Suns are one of the biggest surprises in the NBA so far this season in terms of they have 13 wins already. I think they're 13-9 right now entering tonight. And Dillon Brooks has certainly been a big part of that. Now, Dillon Brooks has been able to score a lot. I should also point out that Jalen Green's been hurt. So we'll see. I'm sure his numbers will certainly come back down to earth where they probably belong. But if you're going to get something close to 20 points a night out of Dillon Brooks, and you've got an antagonist on your team who other teams hate, other fan bases hate, and yet you're able to get 20 points a night, couple of assists, and you're able to actually have that toughness brought to your team. You know, the one thing about Dillon Brooks is, and you can ask any of the players that have played with him in the past, is he is a total team player. In other words, while he's on your team, you absolutely love the fact that Dillon Brooks is a member of your team. All right, enough from me. Love to get your thoughts and opinions on Dillon Brooks. How do you think he's actually going to play the rest of the season? I don't see any reason he's going to slow down. I think his numbers will come down a little bit, primarily because Jalen Green's going to come back. But at the same time, I think he can still complete a season averaging around 20 points a game. Drop your comments in, as always, for the NBA Rundown. I'm Dave Dabbah, wishing you all a tremendous rest of your sports viewing day.